The Bahamas. A place of legendary beauty. Built over millennia on a foundation of ancient ocean coral. On its 3,000 islands and islets, there is a constant struggle between life and death for the most fearsome and magical creatures on the planet. Wide expanses of beautiful sand flats cover the Bahamas, in and out of the water. Carried by the currents and tides, tiny grains shape the distinctive keys, tidal flats and dunes that define this island nation. With the constant movement of water and light, the sand surfaces appear to morph and shift over time. Helping the creatures who use the sand to hide, to nest, and to feed. Rewarding the animals so beautifully adapted to exploit it. Beneath the crystal clear waters, one animal is an unexpected source of much of this sand. The parrotfish. 13 different kinds of this colorful fish live in the Bahamas. With a powerful beak-like jaw, the parrotfish feed on algae from the rocks and reefs. As it scrapes, it also collects small bits of coral. Flat-topped teeth at the back of their throats grind everything together. An indigestible mixture moves through the parrotfish's stomachless digestive system and gets passed out as sand. Scientists estimate that some species of parrotfish can produce 1 ton of sand per year. And provide a steady supply to wash up on Bahamian beaches. Fine sandy bottoms extend for hundreds of kilometers around the islands. And supply ideal foraging for creatures like the coastal bottlenose dolphins here off Bimini. Adults measure between 2 and 4 meters, with a dark gray color on top, which fades to lighter shades below. Dolphins are renowned for their hearing abilities. They perceive sounds up to 160 kilohertz. Their range is about 10 times greater than an adult human. This advantage is enhanced by the fact that sound travels 4 times faster through water than air. These conditions have produced a unique way to detect hidden food, called crater feeding. As the dolphin dives, it emits sounds, many of which cannot be heard by the human ear. It uses information from the echo, the way the sound bounces back off the bottom, to determine how deep the water is and predict whether prey might be concealed beneath the sand. As the dolphin nears a target, it emits faster clicks. When these clicking sounds echo back to the dolphin for interpretation, they create an image of the prey. With this precise location, it dives in headfirst after the fish, squid, or invertebrate. By beating its strong tail, the dolphin roots in the sand. Extracts its prey and leaves a crater behind. It then surfaces briefly for a breath before repeating the process. Bottlenose dolphins consume 5% of their body weight, or between 4 and 12 kilograms of food per day. If the dolphins are hungry and the sand patch is rich with prey, these crater feeding sessions can last for several hours. Bottlenose dolphins are the most recognized and best studied dolphin species because they live so close to shore. Other familiar coastal creatures are gulls. Named for its animated squawky call, the laughing gull is a social bird whose life is lived around the sandy beaches of the Bahamas. They participate in daily washing and grooming rituals in the shallow waters. Here on Sandy Key, this female has found a safe spot to nest on the rocky shore just above the beach. She incubates her eggs, having laid them about 20 days before. It is nearing time for them to hatch. Resting with an open mouth, she regulates her body temperature in the hot sun. When she is hungry, she takes off in search of food. She must return soon, as her eggs will be vulnerable in her absence. Just offshore, the mother hunts, wheeling and diving at the ocean's surface. At the nest, one chick has hatched. Laughing gull chicks are bold and will leave the nest as young as a day to explore its surroundings. It won't have its adult plumage for at least 2 years. For now, spotted brown down is excellent camouflage. At last, the mother nabs a fish and retreats to shore to feed. And then heads back to her nest. Laughing gull eggs are food for other gulls, and birds like doves compete for nest sites. The mother arrives, just in time to defend her nest. The chick will be fed until it fledges, ready to fly on its own at about 35 days. Seagrass meadows are a rich ecosystem of the sand flats of the Bahamas, alive with an abundance of marine life and vegetation. They evolved from a group of flowering plants more than 70 million years ago. While not as diverse as other marine plants, they are successful colonizers of these sunny, shallow waters. Beds of this resilient seagrass stabilize loose sand during storms and hurricanes and add nutrients into the food system by converting sunlight into edible energy, while providing shelter for many small and juvenile creatures. Fish like grunts from the nearby reefs visit at nighttime to feed among the leaves. But larger creatures graze on the grasses themselves. This odd-looking creature called the manatee is a distant relative of the elephant. It is a passive and slow-moving visitor to the Bahamas. Likely born on the Florida coast, it might have traveled on the Gulf Stream current to arrive here. Non-threatening, but enormous, the manatee has no real predators. These seagrass meadows provide it with most of its sustenance. Every day, this herbivore can eat up to 24 kilograms of seagrass and algae. Resurfacing every few minutes to breathe. Coarse bristles that surround its snout help it detect and seize food, even in low visibility conditions. Oil glands line its eyes. Blinking keeps them lubricated and protected from the salt water. The Bahamas are a great place to visit, but there's a problem. These manatees normally live along the shallow, slow-moving rivers of coastal areas, like the southeastern United States, where a constant supply of fresh water flows. In that environment, they consume fresh water by eating juicy plants. There are no similar creeks or rivers on most islands in the Bahamas. As rain falls, it is immediately absorbed by the limestone. Fortunately for the manatee, its kidneys function like a camel's. It can survive a long time without a drink. But fresh water is required for long-term survival. Local residents fill the gap by running a garden hose to quench this manatee's thirst. Onshore, the sand that covers the islands plays a key role in shaping the habitat of other unique creatures. Rock iguanas are tropical lizards and the largest vertebrates native to the Bahamas. Males cluster together on the beach and jostle for territory. When one iguana invades another's personal space, or some tasty bit of food is up for grabs, the aggrieved party shows aggression by bobbing its head and chasing rivals away. The larger one usually wins. Female iguanas have a different set of challenges. They are smaller. Their bodies are less than 30 centimeters long, and they weigh much less. This female is gravid, or carrying eggs. She needs to find the right spot to dig a burrow for her nest. The location of the nest site is important. Eggs cannot develop in low elevation areas, which are too damp. The temperature of the sand must remain above 30 degrees Celsius throughout the incubation. Rock iguanas are herbivores and eat leaves, fruit, and flowers. With a lot of competition on the ground, this young iguana takes to the tree for a meal. It navigates the tree branches. The most appealing leaves can be tough to reach. It is determined to snag a tasty leaf from the flimsy branch. It does not give up. Its perseverance has paid off. The pregnant female has been digging test sites to find a good location for her burrow. She finally selects a spot, and her efforts take on new intensity. The excavations expend a lot of energy. She alternates digging with periods of rest. Gradually, the tunnel gets deeper and reaches about 60 centimeters. Then, she will dig a chamber off the end for the nest. In all, it can take as long as 6 days from the time she begins her test holes to being able to lay her eggs. It will be a small clutch with as few as 3 eggs. As soon as the eggs are laid, the female withdraws, and the youngsters are on their own. Months later, hatchlings emerge from the nests. Like most reptiles, the youngster explores its surroundings and learns to forage all by itself. To navigate the forest alone is a big step. And the young iguana must be wary. In this shallow, sandy lagoon, a sargassum forest grows, and it's a great source of food for juvenile sea life. An iconic sea snail called the queen conch lives inside this glossy spiral shell. It is one of the largest gastropods. The shell can measure 30 centimeters and weigh as much as 2.3 kilograms. Larvae settle into the sand and remain buried for about a year, after which they emerge to feed in deeper water. While this conch is somewhat protected amongst the plants, this large mollusk is most secure with its shell opening against the seafloor. This position allows the herbivorous conch to feed and stay shielded from predators like turtles, sharks, and eagle rays. Its eyes, positioned on long stalks, are more developed than most snails. It can also feel and taste the water with its tentacles. As it matures, the conch migrates to spawning sites on the sand plains. It maintains a determined, if sluggish, speed. The conch uses the pointed end of its foot for leverage, propelling itself like a slow pole vaulter. Silt, bacteria, and algae accumulate on its shell to help disguise the conch in the open ocean. Fighting the current, it perseveres. At last, it reaches the spawning site, with the hope to find potential mates gathering here. The islands of the Bahamas are famous for their beautiful beaches. Most of the sand is made of carbonate, the remains of coral reefs, or the shells and skeletons of marine creatures. Some sand is excreted by animals who have digested the coral. Other is created from organic debris, crushed and tumbled by waves and currents. Certain sands are called ooids, tiny grains of calcium carbonate which rain from the supersaturated warm seawater. The sand is so common, creatures have evolved to hide in plain sight to survive. This is true of the peacock flounder, who appears to be of the sand itself. While it rests on the ocean floor, its two large eyes protrude asymmetrically on top. As larvae, peacock flounders have eyes on both sides of their bodies. When they mature, the right eye migrates to the left side, leaving them blind on the bottom. Each eye moves independently and allows the flounder to look ahead and back simultaneously. Usually brown or gray with spots, it appears speckled to match the seafloor. They also possess chromatophores, cells that darken or lighten in response to the surrounding environment. They produce near-perfect concealment to evade predators like the stingray. The flounder is an ambush feeder, which also uses its camouflage coloring to conceal itself until smaller fish pass by. The peacock flounder thrives in these waters, along the sand flats between the mangroves and the coral reefs. By remaining in the shallows, it stays out of the reach of larger fish like sharks and rays, who need deeper water to navigate. Another occupant of the warm, shallow waters is the green sea turtle. It likely spent the first several years of life drifting throughout the Atlantic Ocean on rafts of sargassum and has returned to coastal waters. Now about 3 years old, it makes its home in the seagrass beds of sheltered bays. It depends on the protection here to reach its full adult size and sexual maturity between 25 and 40 years of age. After starting life as an omnivore eating worms, crustaceans, insects, and plants, the green sea turtle is the only sea turtle species that is exclusively herbivorous as an adult. Serrated jaws help the turtle tear the seagrass. As an adult, it consumes about 2 kilograms of the blades per day and returns to the same plots to munch on the new growth, which is the most nutritious. The green sea turtle is known as a sprinter compared to the marathon or loggerhead turtle. This creature cruises at around 1.5 kilometers per hour during migration, but can reach speeds of 30 kilometers per hour with a predator like a shark in pursuit. The turtles don't always succeed though, as this young female demonstrates. She appears to have been bitten by a shark and lost much of her right flipper. Researchers believe, however, that having escaped and survived the attack, she has a good chance of a long and productive life. On the southernmost island of the Bahamas, the sand flats and the local climate interact to create a unique environment. Here on Great Inagua, significantly less rainfall and lots of sunshine create areas where salt piles up. And attract the world's largest breeding colony of the West Indian flamingo. This elegant avian is the brightest of all flamingo species, and it is the national bird of the Bahamian Islands. Preened with oil, their feathers are water resistant and and standing on one leg is thought to help them regulate body temperature, which is a very important ability in this extreme environment. Flamingos are specially adapted to the intense salinity born of heat and shallow water. The habitat of their prey, brine shrimp and larval flies. They eat by submerging their heads upside down and using their tongues to pump water through bristles in their bills. They suck in water, strain out food, and spit out the rest. Flamingos may be the one bird that can only feed upside down. Even sand isn't an issue. They swallow small particles of stone to help them grind up the tiny crustaceans they feed on. As they defecate, their waste nourishes the algae, which feeds the brine shrimp that forms the bulk of the flamingo's diet. The more they eat, the more food there is. It's a complete cycle. Still more perfect for the bird's poor sense of taste and absent sense of smell. Their shrimp diet is rich in beta-carotene and creates their distinctive pink color. But it takes up to 3 years to fully develop. This flock has many gray yearlings to look after. Young flamingos run and swim by about 10 days, after which they join with other youngsters in a large group called a creche, where they are closely chaperoned by a few adults. Flocks of flamingos have complex social behaviors. They wade together, then change directions suddenly as a group. They also preen communally, distributing protective oil among their feathers. Wing salutes such as these are both a typical courtship behavior and a fabulous display of their 150-centimeter wingspan. Bold signals in an otherwise harsh natural environment. Some sand is kept in perpetual movement by the forces of wind and water. But creatures have also learned to move the sand and use it to their advantage. Worldwide, there are more than 2,000 species of sea stars, and about 200 can be found in the Bahamas. Many have disc-ending feet, like tiny suction cups, which allow them to grasp the seafloor to propel themselves. But the striped sea star appears to hover just above the surface of the sand. It has hundreds of tiny pointed tube feet, used for housing chemoreceptors, absorbing oxygen, and propulsion. The motion of all these feet creates the impression of gliding. Sea stars have simple eyes, mainly used to perceive light. Its primary sense is to detect chemicals in the water, which alerts it to nearby prey. Generally nocturnal, in the darkness, it uses this chemoreception to locate clams, snails, and crustaceans that burrow in the sand. To avoid daytime detection, it uses its arms and tube feet to displace the sand for concealment. Another creature is perfectly adapted to use the shallow coastal sand flats to both hide and reveal. The southern stingray is a species of fish most commonly found off Florida in the Bahamas. It possesses a cartilage structure that some compare to a flattened shark. Together, its body and waving pectoral fins are called a disc. On the top side of the disc are its eyes and two openings called spiracles to draw in oxygen-rich water. On the bottom of the disc is the mouth and the gills to expel the water that contains waste carbon dioxide. The undersides of their bodies are very sensitive and contain receptors which discern not only smells, but chemicals, water vibrations, and electromagnetic waves through the highly conductive seawater. Southern stingrays prowl for food in the sandy seagrass beds near Bimini Island. They detect electric fields emitted by fish, mollusks, and worms as they swim across the sandy bottom. These fish are not fussy feeders. They hunt more than 60 prey species. This ray has found a mollusk. It digs by jetting water from its mouth and gills and flapping its pectoral fins to move the sand. Other rays sense the find and crowd around. They know that bivalves, like clams, often cluster together beneath the surface. They jockey for position, hoping to find some for themselves. Another ray settles on the bottom. It flaps its pectoral fins to cover itself in a fine coating of sand. Bands of cells in its eyes likely give it a wide field of vision. From here, it can see predators and prey approach without moving to reveal itself. It remains well camouflaged until another ray exposes its hiding place. Above the surface, this graceful bird appears just as playful in its pursuit of prey. A rare member of the heron family, this white-phased reddish egret usually feeds alone. Although the dark red type is more common worldwide, nearly 90% of these Bahamian egrets are white. In these clear waters, dark birds may be more conspicuous to fish and less successful hunters. The reddish egret stands about 80 centimeters tall and weighs less than a kilogram. It stalks fish energetically in the shallow waters of coastal sand flats. It has a wide repertoire of feeding tactics. With both wings outstretched to maximize its 1-meter span, it hops and corrals the schooling fish before lunging with its bill into the water. But the egret struggles with the long needlefish, decides it's not worth the trouble, and allows it to escape. The egret changes his strategy. High tide is flooding the shallow sand flat and traps schools of fish. Now is his best chance to feed before the water recedes. The egret pulls back his wings to drive the fish ahead. They flee and burst out of the water in droves. At last in an optimal position, the egret snags a mullet fish. In a swift motion, he swallows it whole, then returns once more to the hunt. The picturesque beaches stretch for kilometers around the islands of the Bahamas. Then out into the tidal flats and seagrass meadows, to the coral reefs that produce the calcium carbonate for the sand underfoot. By anchoring plants and sheltering creatures, the sand energizes the food chain. For all the animals so beautifully and ingeniously adapted to this environment.